My name is Stephanie Phipps. I'm with Children at Risk. Today, we're going to talk about automation and how important it is to building a shared services alliance. As a refresher, the shared services model consists of these core components. You have child care centers, who we refer to as alliance members, and hub partners, which are local organizations. They can be nonprofits, government entities, even child care providers themselves. But they are really positioned to be trusted community partners to convene all of the childcare providers and connect them with the shared services that you can see on the left. These services can be shared across the Alliance members. Within the Shared Services Alliance for childcare providers, the goal is to achieve high quality, and so we need both the business side and the pedagogical side to increase the quality of childcare providers. There are about 30 shared services alliances around the United States, and while each of their communities has different needs, every shared services alliance shares the same goal of strengthening business and pedagogical leadership. We're going to focus on some of the key aspects of the business side. The goal is to help all child care center directors become effective business leaders. You'll work with them to define a vision, to plan, and to strategize so that they can assess their progress and make changes for the sustainability of their business. It's important to help child care center directors learn to manage their business sustainably. This is understanding items such as enrollment, revenue, expenses, and compliance. This will help them build an infrastructure to maximize efficiencies such as automation, technology, organizational structure, staff hiring and retention, and scheduling. The hub organizations will be the ones responsible for helping the child care center directors become effective business leaders. In order to do all of this and to improve quality, we need to focus on what's called the iron triangle of ECE finance. It's difficult to be a sustainable childcare business without these three components. The first component is full enrollment for every childcare center in the Alliance. The goal is to have them fully enrolled every day for every classroom. Many childcare providers are not fully enrolled for a variety of reasons. It could be they can't enroll more children because they don't have enough staff. It could be that they're not sure how many more children at different age mixes they're able to take. The second component is full fee collection, collecting tuition in full and on time. A lot of childcare providers have bad debt, where parents are not actually paying the tuition on time or in full. It often becomes a problem of personal nature. The child care center director may let it slide for a week or select something else in exchange for care for that person's child. But at the end of the day, this is a business, and we do want them to be more sustainable. The last component is to ensure that all of the revenue coming in, whether it's from the CACFP food program, the subsidy program, public pre-K, or Head Start, making sure that all of those revenues are covering the cost for the child care provider to actually deliver those services. So how much is it costing them to go out and purchase food? How much are they paying the teachers, both in wages and benefits? How much was the curriculum, the furniture, and so on? They need to understand their cost per child, but also per classroom, and make sure that their revenues are covering that. This may help inform what age mixes they have as well. To understand these metrics, a childcare provider first needs to automate, and that is where the hub organizations will help them in the shared alliance. What is automation? It's usually a cloud-based childcare management software. A lot of childcare providers may be using paper filing systems or just stacking papers. They may be using Excel spreadsheets for one thing and QuickBooks for another thing. You'll find that some childcare providers actually are using a management software, but often they are not using it to its full potential. As hub organizations, you help them begin to automate and streamline tasks so that they can manage their day-to-day business operations better. The typical features of a child care management software include generating bills, automatically collecting fees from parents, tracking payment and enrollment numbers, and being able to run reports on all of these. The childcare providers will have software, but then as hub organizations that are helping them along the way, you will have what is typically referred to as an enterprise version of the software, so that you can see all of this information as well. You can run reports so that you can help build processes for the childcare providers to help them have a strong iron triangle. These are the roles of the hub organization and the members, the childcare providers. The hub helps providers implement the software. This could mean cleaning off a desk, cleaning out a closet, or whatever it takes them to begin to build this process into their day-to-day work. It also requires you to help them with technology needs. Childcare providers may have a hotspot or Wi-Fi, but it's often not strong enough to support the cloud-based software. You may need to help them upgrade their internet infrastructure. It's not just about getting them on board with the software. There also has to be some accountability and some ongoing technical assistance as you move from the initial implementation phase to a sustainable practice. The hub also regularly reviews the iron triangle data, as well as other indicators such as how much time staff is spending on various items. You'll want to collect that information early on so that you can see how you are impacting them, saving them many hours per month ideally. To understand what the final outcome is, you're going to have to start measuring these things from the beginning. The hub also shares data back with providers. Through the enterprise version of the software, they're watching their dashboards and sharing the information back with the providers to help inform data-driven solutions. This will be a change in practices for those businesses, and it takes some time. That is why we have to be patient and work with the childcare providers to meet their needs. The childcare provider has to commit to using the software, and all the childcare providers in the Alliance should be using the same software. This makes it easier to organize and compare data and to work across all providers. The childcare provider also needs to be honest with hub organizations about their needs and abilities, so they should not try to overpromise. They should try to be realistic about what they can and cannot do, what they are and are not willing to do, so that you can have a good idea of how best to help them. The providers will need to agree to share this iron triangle data with you. It may be hard at first for them to talk about the bad debt or the under-enrollment, and that is where it's important for you to build a relationship with them. That's what we're doing for the next few months in the alliances across Texas, building relationships so that later when we have to have those tough conversations, there's a strong sense of trust among the hub organizations and the childcare providers. Finally, the childcare providers will have to agree to use the data to drive their decision-making. When you have automation coupled with guidance from the hub organizations, it helps strengthen organizational sustainability so that more resources can be directed to the classroom to focus on children and their families. With the automation and business leadership, it's important that we all keep in mind the goals of reducing the cost of operation. For example, understanding the cost per child can help the provider get that ratio lower so it will be more viable for the business. You can't begin to achieve these things or measure them properly unless we first do the automation. Childcare providers will use those automation tools to increase efficiency, and then the hubs will help analyze the needs and implement solutions. Here are a few best practices in automation. If a childcare provider is already using software, they're not likely using it to its full potential. It will be hard to get them to change, so when you're determining what software to use, keep in mind that you might want to go with software that they're already using. Children at Risk has developed a survey to collect this information from childcare providers so we can find out what software they are using. It is also critical to hire someone to help the providers load their data into the new system. Giving providers access to software alone won't be enough. It's important that someone helps them every step of the way and is there to work with the childcare provider to establish processes that work best for that child care center director. They're also going to need ongoing support to continue implementing the technology. The technical assistance will be more intense at first and will be lighter later, but it's still important not to eliminate it entirely. Finally, you need to establish metrics to measure success. Before you even automate, you'll need to understand what those metrics are going to be, and then collect that information before you start to share services, and then throughout as you start to implement the sharing of services. 501 Ops has started helping local workforce boards automate in Dallas. They predominantly serve nonprofit organizations by helping them leverage technology to improve efficiencies within their organization. They did a pilot in Dallas with a child care group that had shared services to determine whether technology could help support child development centers. They found that they could save providers about 30 to 80 hours of their time per month and provide better adoption for technology that actually supports their operations. The key to any of the automations is not necessarily the technology. They first look at what the frontline staff are doing and how much time they're currently spending on those functions. They don't implement technology in the first phase, but really want to understand the opportunities for automation. Then they consider what the best practices are to help providers fulfill the components of the iron triangle. One of the complications is that sometimes the providers have these tools, but they don't have a stable Wi-Fi connection or a computer to actually run the cloud-based program. They look holistically at the organization to see what resources they need. Often we jump to technology as the solution, but we have to support the frontline people by leveraging technology to support the functions they perform. 501 Ops does offer some consulting services to help hub organizations learn from the best practices they have discovered. You'll find their contact information on the last slide. It is important to build in a change management component. This is truly changing behaviors to help the child care center directors to be better pedagogical leaders and better business leaders. We will have a webinar on change management as well. These are some things to expect in terms of change resistance when it comes to automation. Providers may have concerns about the families when you are enforcing payment policies. It is important to validate that concern and to help the child care center director work through it to assure them that they can be spending more time talking to that family about their children rather than hassling them to pay for care. It's also an opportunity to see if there's a sliding scale that could be set up with parents to help them work through that. It's an opportunity for you to deeply understand the child care center director's concerns and help find solutions, while also helping him or her really understand that this is a business and making exceptions for one family impacts their ability to serve all of the other children. Another resistance might be trust issues with child care providers being unwilling to share some of this data, especially since they're now in this alliance with child care providers who they may have seen as their competition. They may be uncomfortable sharing that data about where they are on their enrollment, debt collection, fee collection, or cost per child. If you spend enough time building those relationships, this shouldn't be as big of an issue, and it should be something everyone can work through. There are ways you can accommodate their concerns, such as not sharing their data with the whole group until the provider has seen it, talked to you about it, and given some context. There's an opportunity for them to feel listened to before their numbers go in front of the bigger group. Another one might be reluctance to separate from long-serving staff to improve efficiency. Maybe they have a secretary or office manager who has been there for many years and has done all of this work by hand, or used Excel sheets for all the reporting and compliance. You're going to work with that person to reduce how much time she's spending on these tasks. Perhaps it's an opportunity to reallocate her time elsewhere. Maybe she can be a substitute and help in a classroom when a teacher calls in sick for the day. Maybe she can help with the food management and preparation. It's an opportunity to think about reorganization. And ultimately, as you see more efficient work and less time being spent on tasks, you'll see that there are staff positions that may not need to be filled when someone leaves. It's an opportunity to become a leaner organization in terms of the administrative burden and the administrative tasks of each of the child care providers. Here are some other tactics to address change resistance that you can start right away. As you're building your shared services work, recruit and select providers wisely. You might want to open this up to all child care providers, but some will very likely fall off and say they're not interested. You can be intentional about the child care providers you bring in. You may ask someone who is really cooperative, excited, and can be a cheerleader to help energize others. You might choose a child care provider who is willing to do the work so that you have at least a few of these on board, even if other people falter and decide not to do this. You will still have that core group of providers who are ready to change the way they do business. Second is to involve multiple leaders in the process. As you are beginning automation and building the Shared Services Alliance, having one center director is probably the bare minimum. They will need to be there and be part of the conversations you're going to have explaining the shared services work. It's good to have two people, though. It might be a center director and one of the lead teachers who shows a lot of leadership. It might be an assistant director or another manager, so that if the director leaves her position or she's not able to be at the meetings, you have someone else there to share information and give feedback along the way. It also helps make this work for the child care provider and all of his or her staff. It's not a top-down process. The center director has a partner with her to help address all of the staff's needs and get them on board with the shared services work. You're going to have pushback because this is difficult. You need to be clear about the expectations up front. Shared services is complicated, and there's a lot to explain to the providers. That's why we've got to segment the information to make it digestible. But it's important to be clear about expectations, such as sharing of the data and automating systems. It's ideal for the first 6 months to focus on relationship building, creating these systems and putting them in place for the data collection. It's also important to listen to providers and take their opinions into consideration. Again, shared services is not a top-down approach. It's a shared risk and reward among the members and the hub organizations. It's where everyone is taking a chance and everyone is working together. At the end of the day, the hub organizations are working to make the child care providers successful. The only way to do that is to support them in their needs, to listen to them, to be flexible, and to change based on what they tell you. It's also important to have providers who have participated in other alliances speak with new members. We have a child care center directors in Dallas who have done this business side of automation with 501 ops, and there might be opportunities to have them speak in person or be on call if that's something that your members need. We also have connections with the 30 other shared services alliances across the country and can connect them with you as we go along. Finally, you need to make sure the lines of communication are solid, not just with the director, but also their staff. Their staff may be resistant, so you're going to need to make sure there is clear communication and understanding within staff. If the child care provider is a nonprofit, they may have a board of directors with whom you will need to communicate as well. It's good for them to have an understanding of automation up front, to address all of their questions and to build relationships with them, just as you would a director or an owner of a private child care center. In summary, we're moving from a manual paper record-keeping process to integrated data systems and seamless data transfers to reporting systems. We're moving from passive attendance in business trainings that you may have put on for child care providers in the past to active application of business principles so that child care center directors become strong, capable business leaders. And we're moving from the director or a part-time employee doing the bookkeeping and managing finances to a shared, skilled financial manager focused on iron triangle metrics. That financial manager is the hub organization. and they can provide that service to all of the other providers in the alliance. These are the optimal results that other shared services models have accomplished and that we are looking forward to seeing in Texas. Providers can have higher collection rates and fuller enrollment so they can bring in more revenue. They can improve efficiency among administrative staff and reduce time spent on administrative tasks. Finally, by understanding the cost of care in each classroom, they can make decisions regarding tuition rates, funding that might be needed to close the gap, and the mix of ages for their classrooms. For more information on what you've heard today, you can contact Catherine Ringer at 501 Ops or Shay Everett at Children at Risk.